Mommy. Welcome to Nighty Night Stories. Today, we're going to hear a wonderful bedtime story. Are you ready? Let's get started.
The Firefly's Magical Glow. On the edge of a quiet forest, where the stars seemed to kiss the treetops, lived a tiny firefly named Flicker. Flicker was not like the other fireflies. While his friends had bright and steady lights, his glow was dim and flickered softly. "Why is my light so small?" Flicker would ask his friends, but they only smiled kindly and said, "Your glow is special in its own way." One evening, the fireflies gathered for the glow dance, a magical event where they filled the forest with their twinkling lights. The animals of the forest came to watch. The owls perched on branches, the squirrels sat on tree trunks, and the rabbits peeked through bushes. Everyone loved the glow dance. But Flicker stayed behind a bush, too shy to join. "My light is not bright enough," he whispered to himself. Suddenly, a soft voice called out, "Why are you hiding, little one?" Flicker turned around and saw an old firefly with a gentle, golden glow. It was Grandfather Firefly, the oldest and wisest of them all. "My light isn't as bright as everyone else's," Flicker explained sadly. Grandfather Firefly smiled warmly. "Do you know what makes your glow magical, Flicker?" Flicker shook his head. "Your light shines brightest when it is needed the most." "Come, follow me," said Grandfather Firefly. Curious and a little nervous, Flicker followed him deep into the forest. The two fireflies flew over sleepy animals and sparkling ponds until they reached a small clearing where a little rabbit sat crying. "What's wrong?" Flicker asked the rabbit softly. "I'm lost," the rabbit sniffled. "I can't find my way back home." Flicker looked at Grandfather Firefly, who nodded. "This is your moment, Flicker." Taking a deep breath, Flicker flew in front of the little rabbit. He concentrated as hard as he could, and suddenly, his tiny light grew brighter and brighter, lighting up the forest path. The rabbit's eyes widened with wonder. "Follow my light," said Flicker proudly. With Flicker leading the way, the little rabbit hopped happily along the glowing path. They passed trees, bushes, and a small stream until they saw a familiar burrow in the distance. "Thank you, Flicker," the rabbit cheered as he disappeared into his warm home. Flicker's glow flickered softly again, but he felt a warmth in his heart he had never felt before. Grandfather Firefly smiled. "See, Flicker? Your light may be small, but it shines brightest when someone needs you. That is what makes your glow magical." When Flicker returned to the glow dance, he wasn't shy anymore. He danced with his friends, his light twinkling proudly, knowing that even a small glow could light up the darkest night. And from that day on, whenever the forest was quiet and the stars twinkled above, Flicker's magical glow could always be seen, lighting the way for anyone in need. The Whispering Stars. On a quiet night in the village of Meadow's Edge, little Ella lay on her bed, staring out of her window. The sky was a blanket of stars, each one twinkling softly. Ella loved to watch the stars, but tonight something felt different. She could hear faint whispers floating down from the sky. "Is someone talking?" Ella sat up, her heart beating fast. The whispers grew louder, like a gentle song. "Ella, Ella," they called. "Who's there?" Ella whispered back, her voice shaking with excitement. A soft light filled her room, and a tiny star floated in through her window. It shimmered like a glowing pearl and spoke in a sweet, tiny voice. "Ella, we need your help." "My help? But I'm just a little girl," Ella exclaimed. "You're more than you think," said the star. "The North Star is in trouble. It's losing its glow, and without it, travelers will lose their way." Ella gasped. The North Star was the brightest star in the sky. "What can I do?" "Come with me," said the little star, spinning in the air. Before Ella could ask how, the star sprinkled sparkling dust over her. In an instant, Ella floated up into the sky, surrounded by a trail of stardust. She flew higher and higher until she reached a shimmering place called the Starfield, where all the stars lived. The North Star sat at the center, its light flickering weakly. "Why is the North Star fading?" Ella asked. A wise, elder star floated forward. "It has grown dim because the kindness in the world is fading. Stars shine brightest when hearts are full of kindness, and lately, kindness has been forgotten." Ella thought for a moment. How can we bring kindness back? The elder star glowed warmly. "You must remind people of the little acts of kindness that make the world bright." Ella nodded and turned to the North Star. "I'll do my best." With a wave of her hand, the stars gave her a magical bag filled with glowing kindness dust. "Sprinkle this wherever you go," they told her, "and it will remind people to be kind." Ella floated back down to her village, sprinkling the dust as she went. The dust landed softly on people as they slept, filling their dreams with warmth and kindness. When morning came, something magical happened. Neighbors smiled at each other. Children helped one another with their chores. Even grumpy Mr. Howard, who never smiled, offered to fix Mrs. Lee's broken fence. As kindness spread through the village, Ella looked up at the sky that night. The North Star gleamed brighter than ever, its glow filling the world with hope. The little star returned to Ella's window, sparkling with joy. "You did it, Ella. The North Star shines again because of you." Ella smiled as she climbed into bed. "I didn't do it alone. Kindness has its own magic." And as Ella drifted off to sleep, the stars whispered softly, their song filling the night with light and love. The Journey of the Golden Acorn. In a peaceful oak forest, a little squirrel named Oliver lived with his family high in the trees. One crisp autumn morning, Oliver woke up to find the golden acorn missing from the family's treasure stash. The golden acorn was no ordinary nut. It was said to bring good luck and protect the forest. Without it, the animals feared their home might lose its magic. "I'll find it," Oliver declared, tightening his tiny scarf against the chilly breeze. Oliver first visited the wise owl, Harriet, who lived in the oldest oak tree. Harriet ruffled her feathers thoughtfully. "I saw a shiny flash heading toward the riverbank last night. Start your search there." Oliver scurried to the riverbank, where the morning sun sparkled on the water. There, he met a friendly otter named Willow. Have you seen a golden acorn? Oliver asked hopefully. Willow nodded. I saw a crow flying off with something shiny toward the meadow. I think it might be your acorn. With Willow's directions, Oliver hurried to the meadow. He found the crow perched on a tall sunflower, its feathers gleaming black in the sunlight. Excuse me, Mr. Crow, Oliver called out. Did you take a golden acorn from the forest? The crow cawed loudly. I didn't mean to steal it. I thought it was just a pretty decoration. It's over there by the big rock. Oliver ran to the rock and spotted the golden acorn glinting in the grass. Just as he reached out to grab it, a gust of wind blew it further away, straight into a nearby burrow. He peeked inside and saw a family of mice admiring the acorn. That belongs to the forest, Oliver explained. The mother mouse nodded. We didn't know it was so important. Here, take it back. Oliver held the golden acorn tightly as he made his way home. The animals of the forest cheered when they saw him return. He placed the acorn back in its special spot under the oldest oak tree, and a warm golden light spread across the forest. That evening, as the stars twinkled above, Oliver's family hugged him tightly. You're our hero, Oliver, they said proudly. From that day on, the animals knew they could always count on Oliver, the brave little squirrel who saved the magic of the forest. The Little Fox and the Shimmering Lake. In a peaceful forest, there lived a curious little fox named Ruby. She was known for her bright orange fur, quick paws, and love for adventure. Ruby had explored every corner of the forest, every tree, hill, and meadow, except for one mysterious spot, the Shimmering Lake. The lake was hidden deep within the woods and glowed softly under the moonlight. Animals whispered about its beauty and the strange secrets it held. Some said it was enchanted by a fallen star, but no one had ever been brave enough to find out. One crisp autumn evening, Ruby's grandmother shared an old story by the warm fire. Long ago, she began, a magical star fell from the sky and landed in the lake. That's why it shimmers so brightly. But the star has a guardian, and it's said only a true-hearted fox can see the star's light. Ruby's ears perked up. What does a true heart mean? She asked. It means being brave, kind, and selfless, her grandmother replied. That night, Ruby lay in her cozy den, staring at the stars through the tree branches. I'm going to find that star, she whispered to herself. The following evening, as the full moon rose, Ruby made her way to the Shimmering Lake. The journey was long, and the forest was quiet except for the soft crunch of leaves beneath her paws. Along the way, she helped a little bird untangle its wing from a thorny bush and guided a lost mouse back to its burrow. When Ruby finally reached the lake, it was breathtaking. The water glowed like liquid silver, and the reflection of the moon danced on its surface. She stepped closer and saw her own reflection ripple, but then something else appeared, a faint glow deep beneath the water. Ruby's heart raced as she leaned closer. She could just make out a tiny, twinkling shape nestled among the stones at the bottom. She stretched her paw toward the water when a soft voice echoed around her. Who seeks the star's magic? Ruby froze, looking around. It's me, Ruby, she called. I want to see the star and learn its secrets. The voice, gentle yet powerful, replied, the star's magic belongs to those with brave and kind hearts. Show me your true heart, little fox. Ruby thought of all the times she had helped others, the nest of baby birds she protected from a storm, the squirrel she shared her winter acorns with, and the fawn she led away from hunters. I've always tried to be kind and brave, she said softly. The lake began to glow even brighter, and the faint light beneath the surface grew stronger. Slowly, the star rose from the water, sparkling like a piece of the night sky. Ruby gasped as it hovered before her. Carefully, she reached out and cradled it in her paws. The star felt warm and light, its glow filling Ruby's heart with a sense of peace. The voice spoke again. This star is a gift for your kindness and courage. Its light will always guide you, reminding you of the magic that lives in a true heart. Ruby carried the glowing star back to her den, its warm light lighting her path through the dark forest. She placed it on her windowsill, where it shimmered softly, filling her home with a gentle glow. From that night on, Ruby became known as the guardian of the shimmering lake, a fox with a star's light in her heart. She continued to help others, knowing that the greatest magic of all came from kindness, courage, and the love she shared with the world. The Midnight Snowfall. On a cold winter night, in a quiet little village surrounded by snowy mountains, everyone was fast asleep, everyone except a young boy named Leo. He loved snow more than anything else in the world. But this was no ordinary night. The moon was full, and the snowflakes that fell from the sky sparkled like tiny stars. Leo peeked out of his frosty window and gasped. "It's a midnight snowfall," he whispered, slipping into his warm boots and coat. He grabbed his lantern and tiptoed outside, careful not to wake his parents. The village was magical under the moonlight. The snow-covered rooftops glimmered, and the trees looked like they were wearing coats of silver. As Leo walked, the snowflakes seemed to glow brighter around him. He followed the shimmering trail, his breath forming little clouds in the crisp air. Soon, he reached the edge of the village where a narrow path led into the forest. At the path's entrance stood an old snowman he had built earlier that week. But something was different. The snowman's stick arms were moving. "Hello there, Leo," the snowman said in a kind, creaky voice. Leo stumbled back, almost dropping his lantern. "Why, you can talk." The snowman chuckled. "Only during the midnight snowfall. I've been waiting for someone to come along. Tonight, there's something special I'd like to show you." Though nervous, Leo's curiosity got the better of him. "What is it?" he asked. "Follow me," the snowman said, turning toward the forest. His snowy body glided smoothly over the path, leaving a trail of sparkling snowflakes behind. Leo followed the snowman deeper into the forest. The trees sparkled with frost, and the world around them was quiet except for the crunch of snow under his boots. Finally, they arrived at a wide clearing. In the center stood the biggest, most beautiful pine tree Leo had ever seen. Its branches were draped with shimmering icicles, and a glowing blue star sat at the very top. "This is the winter star tree," the snowman explained. Every year, during the first midnight snowfall, it gathers the light of the stars and shares it with the forest, keeping it alive through the cold winter. Leo's eyes widened. It's amazing. The snowman smiled. But it needs a special touch to make it shine even brighter. You, Leo, have a kind heart and a love for winter. Will you help? Leo nodded eagerly. What do I need to do? Simply place your lantern at the base of the tree, the snowman instructed. Leo set his lantern down, and as he stepped back, the tree began to glow even brighter. The blue star at the top shimmered, sending waves of light across the clearing. The snow sparkled like diamonds, and the forest seemed to come alive with magic. Thank you, Leo, the snowman said. Your light will keep the forest safe and warm until spring. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the trees, the snowman turned to Leo. It's time for me to go now. But remember, the magic of the midnight snowfall will always be with you. Before Leo could say goodbye, the snowman melted into a soft pile of snow, leaving behind only his scarf and hat. Leo picked them up and smiled. When he returned home, he placed the scarf and hat on his windowsill as a reminder of the magical night. And every winter, when the first midnight snowfall came, Leo would look out his window, hoping to see his old friend once again. The Lighthouse Keeper's Gift. On the edge of a rocky cliff overlooking the endless ocean stood a tall, sturdy lighthouse. Its light never faltered, guiding ships safely through the waves. Inside the lighthouse lived an old keeper named Mr. Marlin and his mischievous seagull companion, Pip. One stormy evening, as the wind howled and rain lashed against the windows, Mr. Marlin stoked the fire in his little stove. He was about to settle in with a warm cup of tea when Pip squawked loudly, flapping his wings toward the window. What is it, Pip? Mr. Marlin asked, peering outside. Through the swirling mist, he saw something unusual, a small, flickering light bobbing on the waves. A ship in trouble, he exclaimed, grabbing his raincoat and lantern. Mr. Marlin hurried down the spiral stairs of the lighthouse, Pip following closely. Together, they braved the storm, climbing down to the rocky shore. As they reached the water's edge, they saw a little boat tossed about by the waves. A young sailor was clinging to the mast, his face pale with fear. Hold on! Mr. Marlin shouted. He and Pip worked quickly, throwing a sturdy rope toward the boat. With a strong pull and Pip's clever guidance, they managed to drag the boat to safety. The sailor, drenched and shivering, stumbled onto the rocks. Thank you, he said, his voice trembling. I was carrying a special cargo for the village across the sea, but the storm blew me off course. What kind of cargo? Mr. Marlin asked, handing the sailor a warm blanket. The sailor reached into his bag and pulled out a tiny, glowing orb. It's called the Light of Hope. The village depends on it to light their lanterns during the long, dark winters. Mr. Marlin's eyes widened. Then we must make sure it gets there safely. But the storm showed no signs of easing, and it was too dangerous to sail. Mr. Marlin thought for a moment and then said, the lighthouse beam is strong enough to guide anyone, even across the roughest seas. Let's use it to send a message to the village. The sailor nodded, and together they climbed back up to the lighthouse. Mr. Marlin adjusted the large beacon, pointing it toward the distant village. Pip, with his sharp eyes, helped aim the beam just right. The glowing orb in the sailor's hands seemed to sense the light, and its radiance grew brighter. They placed the orb near the beacon, and the light it cast was unlike anything they had ever seen. It shimmered in waves, cutting through the storm like a golden ribbon. Far across the sea, the villagers saw the beam of light. They lit their lanterns and sent their own glowing signal back in gratitude. The storm began to calm, as if the light itself had soothed the angry skies. By morning, the sea was calm, and the sailor was ready to continue his journey. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said, shaking Mr. Marlin's hand. "Just doing my duty," Mr. Marlin replied with a kind smile. As the sailor sailed away, Pip perched on Mr. Marlin's shoulder and let out a cheerful squawk. Together, they watched the boat disappear into the horizon, the light of hope safely on its way. And from that day on, every time the lighthouse beam shone across the sea, it carried not just light but the spirit of kindness and courage that had guided a sailor to safety. The butterfly who touched the clouds. In a peaceful meadow filled with colorful flowers, a little butterfly named Bella dreamed of touching the clouds. Her wings sparkled in the sunlight, a beautiful mix of blue and silver. Every day, Bella watched the clouds drift high above and wondered what it would feel like to glide through them. One morning, Bella shared her dream with her friends, the ladybugs and grasshoppers. "You're too small to fly that high," said a ladybug kindly. "The clouds are far, far away." Bella sighed but didn't give up. "I have to try," she said to herself. As Bella fluttered higher than ever before, a soft voice called out, "Where are you going, little butterfly?" It was Luma, an old wise owl perched on a tall tree. Bella landed on a branch near her. "I want to touch the clouds," Bella explained. "Do you know how I can get there?" Luma hooted gently. "The clouds are friends of the wind. If you follow the wind, it might lead you to them." Encouraged by Luma's words, Bella flapped her wings and soared upward, feeling the wind's gentle push. The higher she climbed, the cooler the air became. Soon, Bella was above the treetops, surrounded by an endless sky. As she flew, she noticed the wind growing stronger. It swirled around her playfully. "Where are you heading, little butterfly?" asked the wind in a breezy whisper. "To the clouds," Bella replied with determination. The wind laughed. "Very well, hold on tight." It carried Bella higher and higher until she saw the clouds up close. They were soft and white, like fluffy pillows. Bella gasped in wonder as she touched the edge of a cloud with her tiny wing. The clouds giggled softly. "Hello, Bella," they said. "You are the smallest visitor we've ever had." "I've always dreamed of meeting you," Bella said shyly. The clouds swirled around her, showing her their world. Bella saw shapes of animals and castles forming in the mist, and she danced joyfully among them. For a moment, she felt as if she were part of the sky itself. When it was time to return, the wind gently guided Bella back down to the meadow. Her friends gathered around, amazed by her story. You really touched the clouds?" asked a grasshopper. Bella nodded, her wings shimmering with pride. "They were soft and kind, and they even danced with me." From that day on, Bella became an inspiration to everyone in the meadow. She proved that even the smallest creatures could reach the biggest dreams if they believed in themselves. The Hidden Village of Lanterns. Deep in the heart of a quiet forest, there was a secret known only to a few, the Hidden Village of Lanterns. This magical place came alive only at night, glowing with soft, colorful lights from thousands of lanterns that floated like fireflies, casting rainbows of light across the forest floor. A little squirrel named Pip had always been curious about this mysterious village. His grandmother would often tell him stories about it during winter nights by the fire. "It's the most beautiful place you'll ever see," she said. "But only those with kind hearts and brave spirits can find their way there." Pip loved his grandmother's tales, but tonight, as the forest filled with the soft hum of crickets, he felt a strong urge to see the village for himself. With a small satchel of acorns slung across his back, Pip set off into the woods under the silver glow of the moon. The deeper he went, the quieter the forest became. The trees grew taller, their tops touching the stars, and the air carried a faint, sweet fragrance like blooming flowers. Pip felt both excited and a little nervous. What if he couldn't find the village? After a while, Pip spotted a faint golden glow far ahead. "That must be it," he thought, scampering quickly through the underbrush. But as he got closer, he heard a soft cry. "Help! My wing is stuck!" Pip followed the voice and found a tiny sparrow trapped under a fallen branch. Its wing was pinned, and it looked frightened. "Don't worry, I'll help you," Pip said, using all his strength to lift the branch. The sparrow flapped its wings and flew free. "Thank you," chirped the sparrow. "Where are you going?" "To the hidden village of lanterns," Pip said proudly. The sparrow's eyes sparkled. "You're very kind. I'll guide you part of the way." The sparrow flew ahead, leading Pip to a narrow, twisting path lined with tiny glowing flowers. "Follow this trail, and you'll get closer," it said before fluttering away into the night. Pip hurried along the path until he came to a wide, shimmering river. The water sparkled like diamonds under the moonlight, but there was no bridge. Pip sighed, wondering how he'd ever get across. Just then, a swarm of fireflies appeared, lighting up the sky like tiny stars. "We've heard of your kindness," they buzzed. "We'll help you cross." The fireflies formed a glowing bridge across the water, and Pip carefully scampered across, thanking them as he reached the other side. Finally, the forest opened into a clearing, and Pip gasped. The hidden village of lanterns was real. Hundreds of lanterns floated gracefully through the air, glowing in shades of red, gold, blue, and green. They bobbed gently like tiny boats on an invisible sea, lighting up the small cottages below. Animals of all kinds were gathered in the village: foxes, rabbits, deer, and even owls. They smiled warmly as Pip wandered through the glowing streets. A wise old turtle approached him. "Kindness and curiosity have brought you here," the turtle said in a deep, gentle voice. "You are welcome in our village, Pip." May your heart always shine as brightly as these lanterns. Pip's heart swelled with joy. He spent the night exploring the magical village, tasting sweet honey cakes and listening to stories under the lantern-filled sky. He knew he would never forget this adventure. And as the lanterns floated around him, Pip realized that the real magic wasn't just in the glowing lights, it was in the kindness that had guided him here. The Echoing Caves Adventure. Deep within the rugged cliffs of Whispering Valley, nestled between ancient trees and meadows of wildflowers, there lay a mysterious network of tunnels called the Echoing Caves. These caves were famous throughout the valley, not just for their shimmering crystal walls but for the secrets they whispered to anyone who dared to enter. Finn, a young and curious fox with bright eyes and a bushy tail, loved exploring. Every evening, his grandfather would tell tales of the caves, how voices echoed back with strange, magical replies. The echoing caves don't just repeat your words, his grandfather would say. They teach you lessons you didn't know you needed. One chilly morning, Finn decided it was time to explore the caves himself. With a lantern slung around his neck and his favorite red scarf tied snugly, he bounded across the valley. The air was crisp, and the wind carried whispers of adventure. When Finn reached the entrance, he paused. The cave's mouth was wide and dark, framed by glowing moss that sparkled like tiny stars. Taking a deep breath, Finn called out, "Hello? Hello, hello," the cave replied, but its echoes sounded playful, almost as if the cave were laughing. Finn stepped inside, his heart thumping with excitement and a touch of nervousness. The cave was cool and damp, and its walls shimmered with crystals that reflected his lantern's light. As he walked deeper, the echoes around him seemed to change. Sometimes they were soft and musical, and other times they sounded like quiet whispers. After walking for a while, Finn reached a fork in the path. 3 tunnels stretched ahead, each one darker and narrower than the last. He frowned, unsure of which way to go. "Which way should I choose?" he whispered aloud. To his surprise, the cave answered. "Trust your heart," the echoes replied. Finn smiled. His grandfather's advice echoed in his memory: when in doubt, listen to your instincts. He chose the middle tunnel and padded forward, his lantern casting warm light on the walls. The air grew cooler, and soon, Finn heard the soft flutter of wings. A group of bats swooped down, their tiny eyes twinkling in the dim light. "Who comes to the echoing caves?" one bat asked in a high, gentle voice. "My name is Finn," he said, trying to sound brave. "I've come to learn the cave's secrets." The bats nodded and motioned for him to follow. They led Finn through twisting tunnels until they reached a grand chamber filled with glowing crystals. In the center of the chamber was a small, clear pool of water. The echoes in this chamber were different, softer, sweeter, like a quiet song. "Speak your question into the pool," the lead bat instructed. Finn knelt by the pool and gazed at his reflection. "What is the greatest treasure of the echoing caves?" he asked softly. The pool rippled, and the echoes around him grew louder, swirling together into words. "Kindness, courage, and sharing are life's greatest treasures." Finn's heart swelled with warmth. He realized the caves weren't about gold or jewels. Their treasure was a message for the heart. As he stood, the crystals around him glowed brighter, and the bats chirped happily. "Thank you," Finn said, bowing his head. The bats fluttered around him, their wings brushing his fur like a gentle breeze. As Finn made his way out of the cave, the valley seemed brighter, and the sky sparkled with sunlight. He couldn't wait to tell his grandfather about the lessons he'd learned and remind everyone that sometimes, the most precious treasures can't be held, they can only be felt. The Secret Garden of Wishes. In a peaceful village surrounded by lush green hills, there was a tale whispered among the townsfolk, a tale of a secret garden hidden deep in the forest. It was said that this garden could grant the purest wishes, but only to those with kind and selfless hearts. Most dismissed the story as a legend, but Luna, a curious and compassionate girl, believed it wholeheartedly. Luna loved exploring the forest. Every weekend, she would pack a small basket with snacks and set off on her little adventures. She knew every tree, stream, and meadow by heart, yet the garden had always eluded her. One bright morning, with the sun streaming through the trees, Luna set off once again, determined to uncover the truth. As she wandered through a familiar trail, something unusual caught her eye. Tiny golden petals were scattered across the ground, glinting in the sunlight. Luna picked one up and felt a warm, comforting glow spread through her hands. Intrigued, she decided to follow the shimmering trail. The petals led her to a part of the forest she had never seen before. There, hidden behind a curtain of weeping willows, stood an ornate gate covered in sparkling vines. The gate seemed almost alive, its tendrils gently swaying as if beckoning her closer. Luna pushed it open, and her breath caught in her chest. Inside was a garden unlike anything she had ever imagined. Every inch of the ground was covered in vibrant flowers, reds, blues, yellows, and purples so bright they seemed to glow. A crystal-clear stream wound its way through the garden, its gentle babble harmonizing with the birdsong overhead. At the garden's center stood a towering tree with silver leaves that shimmered like starlight, its branches spreading wide like welcoming arms. At the base of the tree, Luna noticed a small, perfectly round pond. Its water was so clear she could see her reflection as if looking into a mirror. Above the pond, words were etched into the ancient bark of the tree. "Make a wish, but let it be selfless. True magic blooms from kindness." Luna's heart swelled as she thought of her village. The fields had been barren for months due to a terrible drought, and the once cheerful townsfolk now wore worried expressions. Kneeling by the pond, Luna closed her eyes and whispered, "I wish for rain to bring life back to my village and joy to the people." The garden seemed to come alive. The silver leaves on the great tree began to rustle, even though there was no wind. Glowing seeds floated up from the flowers, carried by an invisible breeze, and vanished into the sky. The air was filled with a soft, melodic hum, and Luna felt a deep warmth in her heart, as if the garden was smiling at her wish. When Luna returned to the village later that day, dark clouds had begun to gather. A gentle rain soon followed, soaking the dry earth and filling the rivers and wells. The once barren fields started to sprout green shoots, and the villagers, who had gathered in the square, cheered and danced in the rain. Though they marveled at the sudden change, Luna kept the secret of the garden to herself. She knew it was a sacred place, one that could only thrive if protected and used for good. From that day on, Luna visited the garden often. Each time, she brought a new wish, always for someone else. Sometimes it was for a neighbor's health, other times for the animals in the forest. The garden seemed to grow brighter and more beautiful with every visit, as if feeding off her kindness. As Luna grew older, she passed on the story of the garden to her younger siblings, urging them to remember that the greatest magic comes from thinking of others. And though the garden's exact location faded from memory, the spirit of its lesson lived on in the village forever. It looks like our little one has already drifted off to dreamland. May your dreams be filled with joy and adventure.